Guess who I am? What? Peppa Pig.
Spoilers for The White Lotus seasons 1 through 3. So, The White Lotus, created, written, and directed by McQuoid, just wrapped its 3rd season on HBO, and what a ride it has been.
Maybe what I really want is to be one of these Asian girls.
And if you haven't seen it, to give a bit of background, the series is an anthology that follows resort guests and workers at a fictional luxury hotel chain, the White Lotus, and its characters explore themes of privilege, class, race, colonialism, and imperialism, as well as sex, love, and gender roles. I personally think it's one of the most fascinating shows out right now, and will be remembered for years to come. It reminds me a lot of HBO's other show that I loved in the beginning but dropped the ball, Westworld, which focused on guests staying at a resort/vacation spot that tried to tackle the same themes like class and race and fetishization, but fell flat for various reasons. White Lotus, on the other hand, gets it, and that's because the show's creator, McQuoid, gets it. White is a 54-year-old bisexual man who grew up in a conservative Christian household, and whose father, Mel White, eventually came out as gay after years of conversion therapy, including electroshock therapy. His father was actually a writer for various televangelists in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but then after coming out and leaving the Christian right, wrote for years in support of gay Christians and married his husband Gary Nixon in 2008. White and his father competed on The Amazing Race and made it all the way to Phuket, Thailand, and came in 6th place. McQuoid also competed on the Survivor spin-off show David and Goliath, coming in 2nd and making it to day 39. And I think it's important to have this biographical information going in before we delve into the analysis of the female characters, because White's personal life as the creator, director, and sole writer of the series has impacted the way he envisions his characters and their relationships and even the locations. Many have compared The White Lotus to Survivor, as the guests arrive on a secluded island on a boat, they form tribes, reveal secrets, light torches, etc. And almost every episode starts out with a new day and ends at night with a big revelation. They even talk directly about tribes in the 1st season, referencing the Goliath tribes in the reality show White competed in. But of course, the word tribe also has psychological and sociological meanings when it comes to race, gender, and class. His former competitors from Survivor even have made it on as cameo characters in The White Lotus. White has traveled the world, seen different people from different walks of life under desperate circumstances, and has a sort of self-awareness and reflectiveness that is desperately needed in these times. However, it would be remiss of me not to point out how McQuoid has recently, as of March 25th of this year, gone on Andrew Sullivan's podcast. Sullivan, the interviewer, is an anti-trans bigot who has used his platform to tout conspiracies about trans people to his large following and wants to deny trans people the right to transition. So it's weird that White would agree to this interview considering he knows how sensitive trans topics are, even cutting out discussions of Lori's non-binary child because the topic was going to be too important for it just to be a throwaway line. Some might have seen this as cowardice, as he cut it out after Trump's win, but I think it makes sense if there wasn't going to be enough time to dedicate to that conversation. In the podcast, they discuss Sam Rockwell's character's long monologue about how he wants to be an Asian girl and his complicated relationship with sex and race and wanting to be dominated, and someone witnessing that, specifically using Thai sex workers to achieve his desires. In the interview, Sullivan calls Rockwell's monologue an example of a man who has autogynephilia, and alludes to his character as struggling with transition, and White, throughout this clip, doesn't push back on that idea.
Well, coming out as a night to give autogynephilia.
Desire or whatever, and how, and I do think that, like, some of the, you talk about autogynephilic or just, there's some, each person has their own version of this, you know what I mean? And, even a straight person with a woman.
In fact, he seems to agree that it is a thing that the character exemplifies. Autogynephilia is a transphobic belief invented by cis men that trans women transition because they're aroused at the idea of themselves as a woman. Anti-trans bigots use this belief to write off trans women as just men with a fetish. But when it comes to autogynephilia and Sam Rockwell's character Frank, Julia Serano, trans author, academic, and researcher, wrote an essay about the monologue and how conservatives will try to twist this into some anti-trans BS, which they inevitably did. See Helen Lewis's Atlantic article here, even when the monologue has nothing to do with trans people. Serano writes, I highly doubt the show writers were trying to do an expose of AGP, as many GC TERFs seem to believe. It's far more likely that the writers were simply concocting an intentionally over-the-top storyline, sex tourism, sex addiction, embodiment fantasies, oh my, to make the scene as salacious as possible. It's just disappointing to me as a fan of White's work to see him willing to do a podcast with someone who's so anti-LGBTQ+. At the same time, maybe for him, a person who wants to make gay sex transgressive again and not for straight audiences, he saw this as an opportunity to talk with someone with opposing beliefs. Honestly, I have no idea, but this pattern of people watching The White Lotus and heralding it as anti-woke makes me wonder if white satire is effective enough, or if the audience is just so far up their own ass they can't see the jokes on them. Conversely, I don't think we should worship the ground Mike White walks on and the actors walk on. I think we should be critical of the media we consume and the creators of that media. And later on in this video, we'll discuss the fandom and privilege, as well as nepotism. And I just want to say here, trans lives matter and trans people deserve to be protected and loved. If you want to get to know real trans people and support their work and not just listen to cis men talk about trans people, go follow trans creators such as Lily Alexandre, Adequate Emily, and Alex Avila if you haven't already. They're all making great videos about art, media, and other cool stuff. Personally, I didn't care for the scene nor the description of Greg's fetish, though it does have a somewhat funny payoff at the end with Chloe finding a willing third participant, and I'm glad that Frank got back on the sobriety train, even though he's kind of just bouncing from one extreme to the other. I guess that's the point. A lot of season 3 for me just felt like a lot of shock value without substance, and that's just my opinion, but to be fair, I can see the monologue as like, I guess what happens when you take a racial fetish to the extreme. But I think this season just really got away from White, and maybe he just needed a bit of reining in and polishing up, though I did really enjoy the finale. But the first 2 seasons to me are perfect, and I especially love the female characters. In a TV landscape that, though has had its fair share of great female leads, has also had women written by men as cliched stereotypes, so I think it's rare to see a show written by a man where all the female characters are written so well, each with their own depth and flaws. In The White Lotus, we get such a wide range of women, especially when it comes to their morality and values. It just makes the show so fun to watch. So in the rest of this video, I want to analyze the female characters of The White Lotus by season, including season 3, which ended just last week. Too long didn't read, or too long didn't watch. My favorites are Rachel and Harper. This video will be similar to my other TV breakdowns, of which I have made plenty, including Modern Family, Breaking Bad, Man in the High Castle, and The Big Bang Theory, where I discuss the themes, analyze the characters and plots, and talk a little bit about what the show says about us as viewers and the larger culture. But before we get into the analysis, I just want to say thank you so much to Lily Alexandre and Lola Sebastian for their voice work on this video. I couldn't have made this video without your help, so thank you guys so much. Go follow their channels if you haven't already. They're both doing some great in-depth work that will make you think more deeply about both art and society. I've linked both of their channels down below, so go check them out. And now on to the video. Part 1, Season 1, The Trophy Wife Conundrum. So there's a conversation that lives rent-free in my head from White Lotus Season 1 between Rachel Patton, a young working-class woman who has found herself married to a wealthy man many times over named Shane, and her mother-in-law, Shane's mother, Kitty. It goes, a lot of great girls came and went, but you won. And there's a reason you're here and all those other girls are out of the picture, you know? So I think you should just feel great. Yeah, but what's the reason? Like, why am I here? What do you mean? Well, you're very magnetic and you're so beautiful. You're making me sound like a trophy wife. Well, what's so wrong with that? A trophy shines, it's a source of pride, a trophy's made of gold. You know, it's not the worst. Yeah, but that's not what I want to be. The most important thing is, Rachel, you make him happy. That's your secret power, so just keep making him happy. The scene is Rachel, a newlywed who got wrapped up in a whirlwind romance with the New York City elite and eventually married one of its offspring, coming to terms with the fact that she doesn't have to work anymore. And doesn't that sound great? She struggled all her life and is still struggling with trying to be a journalist and is only being given fluff pieces due to her subpar writing skills. So isn't it just a dream come true that now she's free of all that? She doesn't need to pursue writing, she can just be a head of a foundation or do charity work or be a homemaker, and even that she doesn't have to do because they have servants for that kind of stuff. She just needs to dedicate all her time to her husband, the love of her life, and their eventual children. How hard can that be? When you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, right? And on the face of it, in a world where no one wants to work, women who stay home or marry rich and live comfortably have it all right, and in some ways there's a grain of truth to that. But only if you're in a loving marriage with a man who respects you and also participates in the homemaking and child rearing. But even then, it's still a precarious position to be in when you, as the woman, have a huge gap in your resume because you stopped working to take care of the household, to raise children, to be the emotional support and accessory to your husband, etc. And that's not even to mention that by depending on one income, by being financially dependent on someone, in this case a man, if they get hurt, injured, sick, or disabled, or die, where will that leave you? He better have his life insurance and will in place. And even if you're super rich like Kim Kardashian, you can end up in a horrible situation with an ex-spouse. She's now embroiled in a divorce with a person who's frankly very dangerous. I honestly feel really bad about her and what he's doing to her and her children. But even she, who gets clowned on for not working, works. She has her own brand and business, and when she was married, continued to be financially independent from her husband, which is super important. Georgina, who's a trad wife by some standards, to multi-millionaire Cristiano Ronaldo, still works, still has her own way to make an income if the entire thing goes belly up. And of course, your run-of-the-mill trad wife influencer is still making money from being an influencer. They're not financially dependent on just one person, even though they're telling you to not have a job, to stay home and support your husband, etc. This is all to say that women across all classes know that they cannot be financially stagnant, even when married. Whether they pack their message in girl boss wrapping paper or trad wife wrapping paper is up to them. And if these women have to work to remain independent, imagine a regular working class mom who doesn't have the luxury of private chefs, maids, butlers, drivers, nannies, etc., who has to juggle work, her husband, her kids, and the household to maintain her financial independence. And then imagine women who can't work at all because they don't have a choice. They have to stay home with the kids and take care of the household because they have no help, and then have 5 to 10 years of no work experience and are wholly dependent on the man in their life who's just making above the poverty line. Just generally, no woman who does nothing but stay home all day is actually doing that. Stay-at-home moms cook, clean, take care of the kids, make sure they're presentable for their husbands by dieting, working out, aestheticizing themselves to keep their husbands interested, and are managing doctor appointments, grocery runs, playdates, homework, pets, etc. And probably have a side hustle going on to make their own income, whatever that may be. It's actually extremely tiring to revolve your whole world around making someone else happy and making sure you still have independence, which is what White is trying to highlight here with this conversation. Kitty's sales pitch sounds nice and fantastical on the face of it, but actually she's just highlighting more of the problem with the trophy wife dynamic. Not to mention that later we see how mean Shane can really be. He not only doesn't take his wife's career seriously, but when she tells him she wants to separate from him, he throws a tantrum and threatens her that she's making a big mistake. Rachel starts to question her newfound wealth and life with Shane after she sees how horrible he can be when he doesn't get his way, and when Shane calls his mom to help him with the pineapple room on their honeymoon. Rachel can see Shane is just a big baby as she holds feminist values as a woman who wants to be independent and equal to her partner, but at the same time is too scared to go back to roughing it in the city for the rest of her life, especially as a subpar writer who only repurposes articles and is only good enough for fluff pieces. So she decides to be happy, as she puts it. She'll be happy and decides to take the path of least resistance, meaning she'll force herself to be happy despite the fact that Shane will probably cheat on her as she gets older, and that she'll be the primary caretaker of their children, etc. Not to mention being out of the workforce for however many years. But maybe she'll become a momfluencer. Who knows? I just hope one day she asks Shane to help her with a writing career through his family's connections, but that probably is too gauche for their circle. Not to mention, I think Shane knows that Rachel isn't a good writer and just doesn't want to tell her outright nor be associated with her work. And maybe in their echelon, having your wife work is taboo because she should be home while the man brings in the money, because then it would emasculate Shane. But either way, I just find this exchange and Rachel's themes so real and pertinent. Even today, women are being pushed to stay at home, to be stay-at-home girlfriends and wives and moms, and it's marketed and romanticized as some sort of fantasy. And Rachel and Shane's life looks like that from the outside. It's easy to see the allure in Rachel's life because so many women choose that path despite its perils, because under capitalism, it's just easier to not work. But in reality, you're still working just for a different boss. And I hope young women today are able to see the dangers in that, and I like how Rachel's story is told without it being like a PSA to kids, but rather a thoughtful portrayal of young women. I think Rachel's ending with Belinda being like, F this, is just the icing on the cake. cake. Belinda says, "You want my advice? I'm all out." And of course, that's after Belinda got effed over by Tanya. So let's get to them next. Belinda is the manager of the White Lotus Spa in Maui and basically spends her day catering to the wealthy clientele who visit the island. One day, Tanya McQuoid, a rich heiress, comes to the spa and falls in love with Belinda and her healing powers. She declares that Belinda should open her own spa and that they could be business partners together, and Belinda is in disbelief, but makes a business plan and hopes that this rich white woman will make her dreams come true.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Make her dreams come true.
In the end, Tanya, who's a mess this season due to the fact that she's grieving her mother and just generally is an unstable and flighty person, doesn't follow through with her plan, and in reality, it wasn't something that she was really even intending to do, in my opinion. Tanya is just one of those people that says a lot of stuff and doesn't remember half of it, and Belinda, though not totally naive to how guests at the resort are, got her hopes up, as is human. Tanya reminds me a lot of Anna Shea, who was an heiress who lived and passed away in LA, but had Russian and Japanese ancestry and was actually born in Japan. She was a rich and educated woman who was even trained in classical music, but also had this persona of eccentric and ditzy rich woman who, like Tanya, was flighty and unable to find happiness in many things, even though she was constantly surrounded by beauty and wealth. Tanya herself in season 2 drops these hints that she's not as stupid as she seems, that she does understand very well how the world works and is worldly, similar to Cate Blanchett's character in Don't Look Up, and it's really interesting to see. However, that doesn't of course mean Tanya is a great person, and that's okay too. She is fictional after all. She drops Belinda as soon as she meets and falls for Greg. Though she tries to remedy the problem with money, Belinda is heartbroken and forever changed. Then we have the Mossbacher family, headed by matriarch Nicole Mossbacher, a girl boss who is alluded to using the Me Too movement to oust men in power in order to put herself in charge. In a conversation with Rachel and Nicole criticizes Rachel's bad journalism, saying,
"That was a hatchet job."
"Well, it's a puff piece. Are you being serious? It said you were kicking the corporate world's ass."
No, you made it out like I got my promotion because of optics. She rode the Me Too wave. Bullshit like that.
Well, I couldn't not mention the lawsuits.
But you didn't have to make me come across like I was some kind of Machiavellian Gorgon using the victimization of other women in my company just to further my own craven ambitions.
So I think that sums up her very well. Nicole is so invested in her career that she really doesn't have time for anything else. She's Rachel's foil. She doesn't even know that her son's best friend moved away 2 years ago and didn't even think of booking a bigger suite for her family of 4 plus her daughter's friend Paula. She also seemingly emasculates her husband, who feels inadequate due to the fact that she's the breadwinner. So much so that he cheated on her and to make up for it bought $75,000 bracelets with his money. Not her money. That distinction is made perfectly clear. I'm not sure what he does, but whatever it is, it can't be too shabby if he has $75K to spare on bracelets. Their daughter Olivia reminds me a lot of Meg's character from Knives Out, in that she's a young feminist daughter who's aware of her privilege, seemingly wants to help those below her, but doesn't actually want to give anything up. Olivia is friends with Paula, but they seemingly hate each other. Olivia uses Paula as an accessory to make herself feel better for her parents' status and her birth status, and to make her cool with the in crowd, I guess, by making her more worldly than her family. But she still sees Paula as less than and treats her as such. She purposely got with and flirted with boys that Paula has dated and hooked up with in order to, I guess, prove to herself that she's still the better option or just as hot as Paula. There's a lot of talk from Nicole, her mom, about how white men are feeling emasculated by women and how they don't have a safe space anymore because of DEI or whatever. But in reality, that also affects Olivia and white women. White women feel inadequate or threatened by racial inclusivity just as much as white men do. And that's illustrated perfectly with the Paula and Olivia dynamic. It also plays into mimetic desire, which we'll see in the second season, of wanting the same thing that someone else has just because the other person has it. As the season goes on, Paula begins to really resent Olivia and her entire family, not only because Olivia uses Paula to admonish or to own her family whenever they're being racist, but also because she meets Kai, a Hawaiian native. Kai has to work and perform for these white tourists to make ends meet, and his family was actually prosecuted for refusing to move off of their family's land that eventually became the resort. Paula, after hearing about the bracelets, tells Kai about where to find them and the code to the Mossbacher safe in order to steal them and get a proper lawyer for his family. But in the end, he gets caught and is put in jail. It's actually Mark Mossbacher, the father, who attacks Kai Kai and saves Nicole that reignites their love and marriage. The imprisonment and punishment of a Hawaiian native is what gets them going. Nicole's run-in with Kai also rallies the family around her. Her son and daughter stop fighting, and Olivia berates Paula for orchestrating the heist because her mother could have gotten really hurt, showing what side Olivia is on. Olivia eventually gets coddled by her mother during the fallout with her supposed best friend. Paula is left with this incredible guilt that Kai is in jail because of her, but she can't say anything about it to anyone. However, by the end, Olivia actually consoles Paula and spoons her, which I found to be kind of creepy, but Paula accepts the embrace and they go back to being friends. I love their dynamic so much, and I think their relationship starts the theme of not only mimetic desire, as we'll see in season 2, but also fetishization in season 3, where Sam Rockwell's character goes on a long tangent about wanting to be an Asian girl. In so many scenes where we see Paula and Olivia, we think that they're in love with each other, wrapped around each other, almost kissing, etc., like they want to become one, or that they want to engulf and envelop the other, and that they want to be each other, or at least Olivia really wants to be Paula. I just think it's really interesting how these little seeds are set up that grow and evolve and develop throughout the other seasons. So let's go into season 2. Part 2, season 2, That's Amore. Season 2 takes place in Sicily, and it's my favorite season specifically because of Daphne and Harper. They start out as foils to each other and Harper as an antagonist to Daphne, but end the season with a deeper and more appreciative outlook on the other. So when they meet, Harper looks down on Daphne as a ditzy trophy wife who doesn't watch the news, doesn't vote, or at least can't remember if she's voted, and who is seemingly an accessory to her husband Cameron, a rich financier who seems to be the womanizing type. Harper, on the other hand, is politically conscious and cares about the world. She's a lawyer and wants to start a foundation to help those in Puerto Rico, as she's from there. Her husband Ethan is a very by-the-books, upright guy compared to the cocky and volatile Cameron. However, though they may be intellectually superior to Daphne and Cam, Harper and her husband have a much more frustrating relationship. Ethan is seemingly not attracted to Harper, which makes Harper upset, while Daphne and Cam, who they share a wall with, can't keep their hands off of one another. To make herself feel better, Harper says that Daphne's relationship is all fake, a ruse, and that they're still the superior couple. And in the end, Harper is proven right. Daphne reveals that Cameron cheats on her and that they're not a perfect couple. And Harper is over the moon with this news because it means that she's still better than them, but it actually doesn't make her relationship with Ethan any better, nor does it make her happier. Harper wants to find security in her marriage and in herself as a woman who is desirable and attractive, but that continues to be threatened not just by the juxtaposition of Daphne and Cameron, but later when she's led to believe that Ethan cheated on her. She finds a condom wrapper but hides it from Ethan and waits for him to come clean, but he never does. And once he does, after being pressured and confronted by Harper, she refuses to believe him because he hid the truth for so long. So she decides to get back at him by making him think she cheated on him with Cameron, which in turn makes Ethan almost kill Cameron. In the end, we don't know what happened between Cam and Harper, nor do we know what happens between Daphne and Ethan when they walk away together. They could have just had a great in-depth talk, or they could have done it. Either way, the spark in Harper and Ethan's marriage is reignited. Daphne, in the middle of all this drama, is as chill as a cucumber because she knows the drill. She knows Cameron cheats on her, and she's made her peace with it by cheating on him. It's even alluded to the fact that her children are actually a product of an affair with her personal trainer, and she even tells Harper to get a personal trainer herself. She claims that she doesn't let herself be a victim. And I don't know, I just found her to be so self-assured and confident, even though of course her entire life is so precarious as a woman wholly dependent on this reckless, cheating womanizer, but you do you, girl. It's just such a different take than what we usually see. As Harper unravels, Daphne helps calm her nerves and gives her a different outlook, and then in the end, everything turns out fine for them. Despite Harper's spiraling and anxiety, she learns to be more like Daphne. I just found that to be so fascinating. When it comes to mimetic desire, that can be seen with Cam flirting with Harper as he wants her simply because Ethan has her. If they do anything behind closed doors is up to you. Next we have Tanya and Portia, her new assistant. Tanya is vacationing with Greg, who she's now married to, and who insisted that they go to Sicily because, spoilers, he's plotting to kill her and she eventually does die this season. But before all of that, Tanya doesn't want Greg to know that Portia's with them for whatever reason, forcing Portia to stay in her room until the jig is up. It turns out Tanya was actually protecting Portia from Greg, as her presence throws a wrench in the works for Tanya's murder, and Greg needs to find a way to get rid of her. Tanya really does like Portia and works to protect her despite her seeming mistreatment of her in the beginning. Tanya says to Portia,
"Portia, when I see you, I see a younger version of me. You know, when I was a little girl, my mother used to dress me up like a little doll, and I was always a little doll, waiting for someone to play with me. You know, when you're empty inside and you have no direction, you'll end up in some crazy places, right? But you'll still be lost."
what are you trying to say? Like,
get your shit together, Portia.
illustrating Tanya's self-awareness and that she's not as vapid and shallow as she looks or makes herself out to be. In the end, it's Tanya who warns Portia about Jack, and thankfully, instead of going through with his uncle's plan, Jack saves Portia. I really ended up liking Portia's arc of wanting to find a real man, but then realizing that isn't actually what she wants, and that there's no such thing as that. It's just a fantasy. Everyone has their own shit. No one is going to fulfill you or be perfect. So she gets her shit together real quick. The same goes for Lucia and Albie. Albie wanted so much to be the hero that he ended up being scammed out of 50k USD, and honestly, good for Lucia and Mia. Both of these girls play sex workers who end up hooking up with Albie's father, and Lucia ends up hooking up with Albie or scamming him in a long con where she plays the wounded bird and he, the rich American from LA, comes in and saves her. Their ending is so perfect. I love that the girls get the upper hand on this frankly patronizing guy. Albie is a look into how young men are coming of age under the Me Too movement, and he's trying so hard not to be a sexist that he ends up still being sexist by refusing to have bad relationships with women, by seeing them as a means to an end, and by using them to stroke his own ego. And he again gets his comeuppance. He and Portia both learn their lessons at the end of the day and reconnect at the airport. Mia is also able to get what she wants, which is to be a singer and entertainer at the hotel. She starts off not wanting to get into sex work like Lucia, but eventually does to help her friend, and then tries to seduce the current pianist, an old man, to let her sing and introduce her to important people. AKA, he's taking advantage of her and has no intention of fulfilling any of these promises. He eventually gets his just desserts by having a heart attack and leaving the position open to Mia. Valentina, though reluctant to let her sing, allows her to, and Mia, to repay her, offers Valentina her services as a sex worker, knowing that she's a lesbian. Valentina is at first petrified, but she's never been with a woman. Not to mention she's pissed off because one of the women at the hotel who she had a crush on is now engaged to a man. But she agrees and has her first lesbian experience with Mia, and honestly I think it's so great that they show older lesbians who haven't been able to actually have sexual experiences yet for whatever reason. And Valentina is super happy because of it and helps protect Mia, and they seem to have more of a friendship at the end rather than a transactional relationship.
Peppa Pig.
This season just warms my heart because the women get such satisfying endings, so to speak. Except for Tanya, that is, who dies after being almost murdered by quote-unquote high-end gays. Basically, Greg leaves Tanya in Sicily, but hires his old friend Quentin and his gang of gay men to kill Tanya because if she dies, he gets her $500 million fortune. Only for Tanya to discover the whole thing after she sees Jack kind of fucking his uncle, and a photo of Greg and Quentin together when they were younger. And she's able to kill all of them to stop them from killing her. But when it comes time to get off the boat, she hits her head on the way down and drowns. Let me know what you think of her ending, but I thought it was perfect for her. Though I do miss her presence in season 3, fans have said Parker Posey's character as Victoria Ratliff has done a good job at filling Coolidge's shoes.
We're not going to lose everything.
No.
No. And if we did, honestly, I don't know if I'd want to live.
Why would you say that? What does that mean?
I just don't think at this age I'm meant to live an uncomfortable life.
Tsunami! Buddhism!
Part 3, Season 3, Love of Fate. So after watching Season 3 in its entirety, it has grown on me. It's a fun ride, but still, in my opinion, not my personal favorite season. Probably won't rewatch it anytime soon, but it still feels like The White Lotus. Still very funny, very much a slow burn, and very entertaining, even though I wish more of the characters got fleshed out, specifically the staff, like Pornchai, Samrita, Pam, Fabian, and Mook. Valentina and Guy Talk were the main staff characters, which, though interesting, I wish there were more female staff characters and members who got a backstory or little character moments like we had with Valentina, Mia, and Lucia. The female characters we do get are guests in the hotel. I think my favorites are Piper and Victoria, but there's also the trio of friends, Chloe and Chelsea, as well as Belinda, so let's look into them. So the 3 middle-aged friends on a girls' trip are Kate, a trumper, Lori Duffy, Reed Duff, a divorce lawyer, and Jacqueline, a celebrity with an age hang-up. Jacqueline is very anxious about how old she is, even being horrified at being sent to a beach for retirees by Valentine, a young yoga instructor at the resort who she thought saw them as hot. She is also dating a young actor in Hollywood, but he seems to be ignoring her calls while she's away. The girls butt heads after Jacqueline decides to hook up with Valentine, even though she was egging on Lori to get with him. They get into a spat and Kate, the spineless one of the friend group, sides with Jacqueline, and Lori goes off and hooks up with Alexei. After sex, Alexei tries to extort her for money, though in a pretty hilarious scene, and Lori escapes unscathed. In the end, much like Harper Harper, Lori calls out the girls on their BS about how they treat her as the odd one out. But in the end, she realizes it doesn't make her happier being the intellectually and morally superior one of the group. If anything, it makes her feel more empty, and she gets welcomed back into the fold. Very reminiscent of Paula and Olivia, as well as again Harper and even Portia, who try to put themselves above others only to realize it's not where they want to be. The same thing happens with Piper and Victoria, though I'm curious if Piper just wants to go home because of the food and the lack of luxury, or because Lachlan kind of intruded in on her space. But even so, much like Olivia and Nicole, Piper and Victoria aren't so different after all. I love how their fate at home is left up to our interpretation. Did they lose everything? I also thought Lachlan's rebirth and ability to find himself anew after having an OA moment with Jason Isaacs of all people was a great payoff. In the end, he's just a people pleaser and has no direction, as he says himself. He doesn't do anything out of malice, he's just confused, which doesn't make his behavior okay, but does explain his character. I just hope his rebirth helps him find out who he wants to be in life. Then there's Rick and Chelsea. Chelsea and Rick's relationship never really goes any deeper than I can fix him and she likes a project, so that's what attracts them to each other. But honestly, I thought they were boring. I know that's unpopular because a lot of people on the Reddit page love them, and that's fine, but I don't know, I just didn't care about either of them or their arcs. Their performances were great. I loved the scene at Sritala's house, like how Rick and Frank prepared nothing going in. That was hilarious in hindsight. And Chelsea's conversations with Saxon were interesting, but I just couldn't get into them as characters. And again, this isn't any shade to the actress who plays Chelsea. She's so great, and she's even done interviews talking about how her teeth are making waves in the US. People have compared her to Shelley Duvall, and I think it's great that White hires actresses with unconventional features, like Amy Lou Wood's teeth and Simona Tabasco and Beatriz Grano, who of course are beautiful, but are also not filtered through Hollywood and Instagram. The actress who plays Chloe, Charlotte Le Bon, also has natural teeth, the same with Haley Lou Richardson. They all look more like real people. However, it should be noted that Amy Lou Wood is sick of people discussing her teeth and not her killer acting skills. As for Chloe and Chelsea, the former is Chelsea's newfound BFF on the island, who is in a relationship with Greg, or in this case Gary, as that's what he calls himself in Thailand. They become close because they're both in age gap relationships. Chloe in episode 5 has some weird stuff going on with her, as she seems to really like to be with young boys around 18 or so, even though the character is supposed to be in her late 20s. However, the actress is 38. She's really excited to get with Lachlan, who's supposed to be a high school senior, which is very creepy. She even asks where he is when Saxon and his family arrive at Gary's house for the dinner party in episode 7. She also helps facilitate Lachlan kissing his brother Saxon in a non-consensual act. Honestly, just creepy vibes from her all around, but even by episode 7, we don't know if she's in on the plot with Greg or not, which is frankly kind of annoying, but as they survive this season, maybe we'll find out more next season. However, with Quentin, we got little seeds from Tanya's POV that he wasn't who he said he was, which made us invested in the mystery. But for this entire season, we haven't gotten a single hint other than Gary would kill me from Chloe. Like, okay. There's a lot of telling from Chloe about Gary, about his fetishes, and about his past relationship, but we don't really see their motives ever. We never walk in on them in an intimate moment, and it made me lose interest in her as a character, and honestly, Gary or Greg as a villain just doesn't seem like much of a threat. He paid Belinda off, and all's well that ends well. I'm glad they seem to be okay, and hopefully we can just end all of their stories right here. Please don't bring them back. I don't care enough about Greg to find out more. And honestly, I'm just happy Belinda got her bag in the end, and even though she was supposed to screw over Pornchai as a reversal of what she did to Tanya, it didn't hit as hard since we never really got to know Pornchai as a character. Yes, he was Belinda's colleague and seemed interested in the business and in her, but he never made a business plan. We never saw him getting to and from work, calling his family members about Belinda. I know it was supposed to be a mirror, like money corrupts or whatever, but Belinda's right. She doesn't want to live close to someone who could kill her. It's just not the same circumstances. But this is definitely Pornchai's villain origin story. Next, there's Mook and Guy Talk. Not much to say about them, sadly. Even though they go on a date in the 7th penultimate episode and Guy Talk sees another side of Mook in that she's okay with violence, I don't know why she's saying this. Character motivations for her are lacking. Why is she pushing Guy Talk to put himself in harm's way if she likes him, just so he can provide her with an extravagant lifestyle with his newfound promotion? Is she into bad boys? I don't know. She doesn't seem materialistic to me. We never see her life outside of work and Guy Talk. I know Guy Talk needs a reason to pursue killer instinct to get with Mook, but it just feels like the weakest storyline. Though I do find it interesting how Guy Talk needs to make himself into something he's not in order to improve his financial status and is going against the culture of nonviolence and Buddhism he was raised in. It just felt meh to me. And I know as the audience we can't know everything, but didn't Hitchcock say that a scene is more suspenseful when the audience knows there's a bomb about to go off? Why do we know so little about these seemingly important characters? I guess the staff's lives in this season weren't a first or foremost thought, and they didn't get anything besides some funny expressions and one-offs, which again is fine, but that's one of the reasons why I watched the show, for the staff, and that was missing for me this season. Next we have Sritala, who's portrayed by Patravati Medjudon, and she's supposed to be a famous actor and singer from Thailand, which she actually is. Medjudon is a big deal in Thailand. She's also known as Lek, and it's cool that White intentionally decided to put in an older Thai entertainer as well as a younger one, that being Lisa. I just find her juxtaposition as an older woman against Jacqueline, who has a fear of aging, interesting, but they didn't really interact much. Like, Jacqueline, don't be afraid of aging. You can still be wealthy and talented and liked. She also delivered the last blow to Rick. He is your father. He told me. Like, okay, I don't know if that would have been better to reveal earlier, but it just felt so cliche. I'm glad we didn't get more time devoted to it. And lastly, we have Amrita and Pam. Amrita is basically Rick's therapist and healing specialist who wants to get to the bottom of his trauma and help him heal. She comes up to him one day in the lobby in a scene early on in the season and talks about how much work they can do together to help him. And I'm like, what? I don't know why Amrita is so invested in him other than that's her job. I wish we knew more about her and why she has this connection to Rick, but in the end, when we do see her again, she's very down to business. She can't help him when she's with another client. She's not there to save you, Rick, which I like. The staff are there because it's their job, not because they love you, but I wish we saw more of her own life and what she's dealing with and what it's like dealing with these types of clients. Pam is one of the staff workers who guards the technology that the guests give up in order to have a more relaxing time on the island, and she's really funny. I love her delivery and she's a great presence, but what do we actually know about her? In the end, unlike so many of the previous seasons, we don't know the staff very deeply, and it's a shame. One of the best characters in the entire show was Armand, the manager in Maui, and we loved him because we got to know him. We knew why he was doing what he was doing, why he wasn't going to give in and say sorry to Shane, and he was so delightful in his scheming and plotting. In season 2, we got to see Valentina eating lunch outside with the stray kittens and her interactions with the sex workers, Tanya, and the rest of the guests. Here, the inner lives of the workers of the hotel except Guy Talk are totally unexplained. Though I thought the ending of season 3 worked everything out, overall for me season 3 was just too crowded. Like, we could have done without 2 or 3 guest characters and used that time to focus on the inner lives of the hotel staff and get their perspective on what was happening around them. Or just reduce the cast altogether so we got to really know who we were watching. Honestly, as much as I loved how Laurie's plot echoes that of Harper and Paula, I could have done without the 3 girlfriends, who though had their big blowout at the end and wrapped it up with the status quo being restored, didn't feel as satisfying to me as the previous seasons. And I think that's because we didn't get to know them as well, and the revelations were too slow and with a lot less stakes. With Harper and Daphne, Harper found out her and Cam's marriage was bogus early on, but calling that out didn't make her happy, just resentful, and informed all of her moves going forward. She also was more active in the revenge on Ethan, whereas Laurie was just a quiet observer. With Paula, she couldn't escape the aftermath with Kai nor the Mossbacher clan. She had to put on a brave face and cry herself to sleep at night silently, surrounded by people she hated. The more Rachel was with Shane, the more she wanted to leave him. And though everything returned to the status quo in the end, their relationship was forever changed. It felt like nothing changed for Laurie and Piper at the end. Paula will have to live with what happened to Kai forever. Olivia knows how diabolical Paula can be now. Piper and Laurie just go home. There was just a lot more tension. Laurie has her own room and can just escape from the girls whenever she wants. The same with Piper and her mom. She just leaves. I thought it would have been more interesting for Victoria to go with her than Lachlan. Saxon and Lachlan, though, finally hash it out in the end, still kind of just avoid one another, and that's that. And though I think that's in character and realistic, people don't just go around and confront each other constantly, there's subtext, etc. It just feels like a lot of the stuff that happened just happened and then that's it. Piper learned that she's a pampered princess. Lachlan learned he needs more direction in life. Chelsea can't fix Rick. Laurie does like her friends, despite their pettiness. These are important revelations, but they feel like they had less weight to them because we didn't really get to talk about what happened. Harper's revelation about Daphne and Cam's marriage moved her entire story forward. Laurie confronting her friends didn't end in any real consequence for her. Paula confronting Olivia ended in Kai's arrest. Piper coming clean to her mom didn't have any real depth to it. She'll just go home. Okay. I guess she might go home to financial ruin, which could be interesting, but we never see that. And honestly, I think that's the right choice, even though it makes the show less interesting. But to be fair, I couldn't imagine any of their storylines ending something differently. No script doctor here, I just felt like the characters, though entertaining, didn't have enough happening to them to hold my interest like previous seasons. Generally, season 3 was lacking character-wise for me, and I know they were building it up for the finale, like edging it along if you will, and the finale was satisfying, but a lot of this season just felt like a whole bunch of nothing. I will be waiting for the 4th season, but my expectations have been lowered. Privilege and fandom.
All about the money. The money, money, money. Money, 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 money.
Firstly, it goes without saying that the cast of each White Lotus season is mainly white, and that's because White wants to talk about white privilege, and also because, to be realistic, most rich people are white, hence why Belinda feels the need to mention the black couple on her trip to her son. However, what I loved about the 2nd season was that Ethan was Asian, and it was wholly unremarked upon. Like, that had nothing to do with his character, he was still able to be a guest at the hotel. I just feel like there should be more of that in all TV shows, where the actors of color can be cast and not have their race be central to the story. They can just be, like how the white characters and actors can just be. And I thought that this pattern would continue in the next season, but season 3 felt like a huge step back in that regard. Even though Belinda was there, she wasn't even a guest, but rather on a business trip. And though there was racial diversity with the staff, like Pornchai, Guy Talk, and Mook, and even Shritala, all of them were given extremely minor roles except for Guy Talk, leaving just 2 characters of color, Guy Talk and Belinda, as main characters. And honestly, Belinda's character arc wholly centers around Tanya again, which even she complains about. And Guy Talk's character, though compelling in that he has to turn to violence when he was brought up under a religion of non-violence, was too slow a burn for me. I never really felt any connection to his and Mook's storyline. It just felt a little too late, and Mook needed a lot more fleshing out. But it was cool to see Shritala, or in this case Patravadi Mejudan's career, and to show a mainly American audience entertainment from Thailand. And a consequence of most of the cast being white is that most of the fan casts that fans do online are mostly white people. And the fans expect the cast to be mostly white people. And some fans are even outwardly antagonistic to when black characters get too much screen time, like Belinda, who was seen as fan service to some, as if she didn't deserve to come back. The biggest consequence to this mostly white casting is that white actors continue to get more exposure and more press, and a lot of the white actors come from privileged backgrounds. They're either nepo babies with family in the industry or come from privilege and politics. They come from wealthy families where they got to pursue acting at young ages without taking much risk if it just didn't work out for them. From Patrick Schwarzenegger, who is also a Kennedy through his mother, to Sam Nivola, son of Emily Mortimer and Alessandro Nivola, to Charlotte LeBlanc, the daughter of Canadian actor Bridget Paquette, to white women born into great privilege like Alexandre Daddario and Connie Britton, who come from money and politics. Specifically, Daddario's father was a prosecutor and former head of the NYPD counterterrorism unit, and her grandfather was Emilio Q. Daddario, a Democratic member of the U.S. House of Representatives for Connecticut from 1959 to 1971, and Britton's father, Edgar Allan Womack Jr., was an energy executive and physicist. Daddario, raised on the Upper East Side, specifically started acting lessons as a child, and at age 11 decided she wanted to become an actress. She herself said, "I could have done anything, really. I did have every opportunity on the planet." That's what happens when you're born into money. And a lot of people hate when you point out privilege because it breaks down this facade that everyone deserves to be where they are. It means that we don't live in a meritocracy. Some people get to where they are because they are able to pursue their dreams and not risk their livelihoods. Some people have supportive and wealthy parents who can enroll them in whatever class and field they want to without a second thought. Some people come from families that have insider connections, industry knowledge, and are powerful, respected people that make for an uneven playing field. Maya Hawke even said that she can't delete her Instagram because some studios demand a total number of followers their cast has to reach, and if the following isn't there, their projects can't get made. And if you're a kid of a famous person, you already have a built-in leg up. Though I will say for Patrick Schwarzenegger's role in The White Lotus, his name was the reason he almost wasn't hired, but he was just too good in the role. And I agree, he's great in the role. He's my favorite character this season, but that still doesn't mean his class and racial privilege didn't help him have opportunities opportunities that made him the great actor he is today. And also the term Nepo babies kind of obfuscates from the real issue here, which is class and racial privilege. It's not about individuals, it's about a system that individuals benefit from. In the end, it's not just nepotism, it's class privilege that allows so many wealthy white people, in particular, to pursue their artistic dreams and have access to training and education that is withheld from those outside of those circles. To reiterate what Daddario said, many of these people have all the opportunities on the planet. It's all very real and something very concerning as the gap between the have and have-nots only grows wider. And that's not to say that the best role for the job doesn't go to the best people per se, and that these actors who come from privilege or nepotism or wealth don't have what it takes, as there are Nepo babies who fail tremendously, but rather it just makes it feel as if merit has less and less meaning as time goes on. To conclude, I just want to make it clear here that I'm not saying that the cast are bad people from benefiting from privilege and wealth and even nepotism. Nor are you a bad person for enjoying the show. I love the show too. My two favorite performances have been from actors who come from wealthy and powerful families. And to give credit where credit is due, Posey Parker during interviews has had nothing but great things to say about Thailand and her 7 months there. I think that's huge in and of itself as an American, that she recognizes that she has power in her words. And most American audiences are going to be viewing this show about and othered people and culture from a biased US-centric perspective that looks at Thai culture through a distorted American lens. And as an American tourist coming back from that experience, it would be so easy to paint the nation in a stereotypical backwards light, but thankfully she never does. I think The White Lotus as a show is great simply for that reason, showing US audiences that they're not the center of the world. I especially found it funny in season 2 when these sexist American men think they're going to be welcomed back to their natal home with loving arms, and they're kicked out. Just Mike White, you get me. Jason Isaacs, for whatever it's worth, has also used his interview space to talk about healthcare and politics and even apologize for slut-shaming actresses like Mikey Madison when comparing his nude scene to other prominent female performances, saying, "I said the wrong words in the wrong way. I used the phrase double standard, which I didn't mean at all." Isaacs told Variety, "There is a double standard. Women have been monstrously exploited and men haven't. Women have had a monstrous time on camera forever, and I hope to God that's changing." So again, the cast are not bad people for simply benefiting from privilege, but I do think it is important to bring up because this is not a meritocracy. If we don't have these conversations around fictional characters in a fictional show about race, privilege, and class, then when will we have them? This unwillingness to discuss how the themes of the show interact with the real world will become clearer in a moment when we get to the fandom. But to finish off this part, I will say it's great that White consistently hires older women and gives them complex storylines, and gives them work when it's so hard for older women to be taken seriously in Hollywood. I just hope the cast's racial diversity broadens a bit. And I know they can do it because they did a great job with Kai and Paula and Ethan. I know they can write characters of color outside of their race and within the construct of race. So let's hope things get more interesting next season. But for now, I'm Natasha Rockwell in this cast interview where they're talking about Schwarzenegger's breakfast routine. Like, what the hell is going on?
Wherever we went, Patrick would find the chef, take them aside,
and become best friends
till
with
they
them.
were desperate to get his approval and make special dishes for him.
Oh, the chef from the Rosewood.
Oh, Giuseppe?
And then, yes.
There you go. Of course you know his name.
As for the fandom, I roll my eyes whenever I see posts on forums or fan pages about how expensive the watches the cast is wearing are, or how expensive their wardrobes are. It just makes me angry knowing a $500,000 watch exists. It doesn't make me go like, whoa, that's awesome. And I know they need these props for the show because the cast is supposed to be extremely wealthy, but seeing people, namely fans of the show, fawn over this luxury stuff just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. The same with the brand deals and crossover promotions like Abercrombie and the White Lotus. That just screams landfill to me. But many fans just shrug their shoulders like, all TV shows do this, what's the big deal? And I guess it wouldn't be as conspicuous if the show wasn't trying to make a point about consumption and wealth and materialism. And just generally, the more time I spend on the fandom Reddit of the White Lotus, the more I feel like my soul is leaving my body, like I'm one step closer to death every time I read someone's theory about how the show is going to end. A lot of the fans there are just very hostile, uncritical, and unfunny. Many just worship the show and the ground the actors walk on, and I'm not about that. For example, one commenter went on this rant about how he hates that the show puts the poorer people in a positive light and the rich people people in a negative light. Like, what are you on? Not only are all the characters in the White Lotus usually morally gray, or at least aren't all good or aren't all bad based on their class, why does it hurt you to root for a poor person, a poor fictional character? The poster was angry that McQuoid makes us sympathize with poor people and staff because the resort guests deserve a good vacation because they're paying the employees' wages. Writing, imagine being ungrateful to people actually paying your salaries. We have all experienced shitty staff at certain points in our life. Like, you know the show is fiction, right? The poster used Shane as an example to say that Shane was hated on and made to seem evil when he was actually right about the pineapple room and it was Armand who fucked up and was evil, but the writing makes us sympathize with Armand more than Shane, as if that's some sort of moral failing of the show. Later, after that post came out, there was an overcorrection with Shane on the subreddit saying Shane did nothing wrong or that his main problem was just with Rachel, but with Armand he was justified in treating a staff member that way because he was right about the room, which is honestly a technicality. It doesn't have anything to do with how he actually treated him. Many posts were made in jest, but others were serious. Personally, I like Armand's pettiness and unwillingness to own up to his actions and make Shane's life a living hell. As for Armand, this was probably the 100th type of guest he's had like this and had to deal with, but with Shane, this is the first time he's being told no, and he can't stand it. And it's fun to watch that play out. I think it's nice that the show makes us sympathize with people who are usually supposed to be invisible, as to not disturb the guests. It's nice to see what they're thinking and feeling and see that people that are seemingly invisible have inner lives and don't just exist to serve the wealthy. And I like Armand, and many other people do too. That doesn't make us evil, he's a character in a show. When I read comments on the Reddit page, it makes me wonder if any of the class and gender critiques are reaching the audience, or if the messages just get lost along the way because we're too busy looking at all the opulence and gawking over Walter Goggins. So that's it for this one. I hope you liked it. Let me know who your favorite female character is down below, and also what you thought of season 3. I will also say I love all the male characters on the show too. I think White brings up a lot of themes about masculinity that are really important, and that's great. For season 4, I think it would be interesting to set it on a cruise ship so the guests have to interact with one another and there's no way to escape. It would also be an opportunity to talk about those viral cruise ship videos that highlight how dangerous it is for women to be on cruise ships, etc. I'd also like to thank Alexandre and Lola Sebastian again for their amazing voice work, and go follow them if you haven't already. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.